Conscious Kenya is an organization that was started by Edgar and Melissa last year, and it's a beautiful platform for you know. Okay, there's a lot of echo. Hello. Hello.
That's quite a bad echo.
Sorry, I don't know what to do. Should I go on? Okay, it stopped. Hello. So yes, Conscious Kenya. It's a beautiful organization that promotes well-being and spirituality and health at large, and we have a lot of people who are registered as practitioners of various spirituality practices. And in the lockdown, they decided to have these chats and this Conscious Kenya show and discuss issues that are sensitive. So we have this episode that is going to be having you, Fareed, and discuss your addiction and how you overcame it. So before we start, I mean, getting into the addiction and the story behind it, let people don't know. Some people don't know who Fareed is. Maybe you can tell us who Fareed is, where are you from, what do you do?
Sure. Yeah, so my background is obviously based in East Africa. My mom was born in Kenya, my father in Tanzania. I was born in the UK and grew up in the US up until 2000 when I came back to Kenya. I started my media career in radio, then got into the world of television and television production. And, 21 years later, still in Nairobi, still working in radio at Capital FM, but also running a production house that works quite heavily with a lot of international clients for, reality TV, magazine-style television, and TV commercials, documentaries, etc., etc. So I'm sort of embedded in the world of media.
Right. And in regards to the drinking, we get into it.
All right, fine. Yeah.
So when did you start drinking?
Probably around the age of 15. I grew up in an alcoholic household. My father was an alcoholic, so but I mean, it wasn't something we talked about then. Okay. Even now, there are certain members of the family that would never admit that my dad was an alcoholic. So alcohol was always around. There was not really any taboo or any restrictions on drinking. So it wasn't a big deal to have a glass of wine or have a drink with dinner or that was kind of normal based on the fact that we weren't really living in Muslim society. We were more living in a Western kind of world, in the UK and the States. So it wasn't really, it's just something everyone did. So it wasn't a big deal at all. So yeah, I probably had my first drink when I was 14 or 15.
Okay. And how did it escalate? Like, how did you?
High school in America, college in America. I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The movies and what you see on in the films and television, it's not too far off from that lifestyle. I was, an athlete in high school. Went to all the parties, drank a lot, etc., etc. But again, it wasn't abnormal. It was quite normal. You don't really think of it as a problem because everyone else is doing it. I think the challenge that I faced was when people started tapering off after university. You go through your party phase in college, and then when you get in your 30s, people start to taper off and drink less. I just didn't. You know what I mean? In fact, I think I might have started drinking more. And there was no real. I mean, I drank every day for a long period of time. I mean, I wasn't drunk every day, but I drank every day. I think that's where the dependency and Uh, I mean, it could be anything from, a half a bottle of wine to a bottle of wine to five, six
Okay.
doubles of whiskey. I mean, it wasn't, being drunk once a month or once every weekend is not, that's not an addiction. Drinking every day, even if you're not getting drunk, is an addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, I mean,
you'd
it
end
was
up
more,
in,
more, it was more a dependency on alcohol without thinking it was a dependency because I slept, I went to work, it wasn't like I was suffering or not working hard. So I never looked at it as an addiction until about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And then I realized that there was a problem.
so how much, sorry, so why did you realize it was a problem? Like, what made you feel it was a problem suddenly?
I think it's an expansion into when the functionality stops, when you're no longer able to do the things you could do before, when you realize that if you got bad news, you drink. If you got good news, you drink. There was um, always a reason to drink. If you had a long week at work, you drink. If you scored a new deal to do a new TV show for a client, you drank. If it was someone's birthday, you drank. If it was Tuesday, you drank. So I think that's where I realized that it was a problem.
And how was it affecting you that you decided that this is too much, or you thought, okay, I'm addicted, I can't do without it? What?
I think for me, it was more the inability to cope with certain stressful situations without having a drink on hand. So, where it would be things that you can get through, most people can get through without a drink, like losing a deal or fighting with someone, family member, whatever. I think when I realized that I couldn't cope in a stressful situation, when my crutch in those situations was to have a drink, and it was a reason I've had this kind of day, or this has happened in my life, or then it was just, at some point you're like, hold on, can I stop this if I want to? So I tried and I couldn't. I mean, I would stop for a while, but ultimately always ended up back, to drinking as well. So
So what what did you replace your activities with? The addiction. What did you? How did you replace the addiction?
So I just a bit of a backstory. I ended up in rehab in 2018 on the 1st of March
Okay.
for 35 days in South Africa. I had an addiction to alcohol. I had an addiction to drugs. I was pretty messed up. So with consultation with my family and people close to me, I decided that it was time for me to go and get help. I tried many times to see addiction counselors here in Nairobi, but half the time I would leave the counselor's office and go to a bar. You know what I mean? So they clearly needed some external help.
You decide that yourself? Like it was something you decided
Yeah,
yourself, or?
it was a collective decision. A lot of family involvement. I mean, I had to go to them and say, I think I have a problem, and then we kind of came together and said, what's the best solution for this problem? So I have a lot of support from my now ex-wife, my aunt, my mom, my family in the States. We all kind of came together, and so I couldn't do it on my own. That was the big problem. There was no way I could handle this on my own. And when I realized that there's a step in Alcoholics Anonymous which says that you hand over your addiction to someone else, normally
Okay.
a higher power, God, if you want to call it God. But it's just when you admit that this is not something I can do on my own. So I went away for 35 days, initially 28, but I stayed an extra week because I wasn't quite ready to leave. And probably the best decision I've made in my life and the best money I've ever spent in my life, to be honest.
So where did you end up going in South Africa?
I went to a place called Bloemendal Addiction Treatment Center, which is near Stellenbosch, which is wine country. But but yeah, so ironically, I had been there a year before for my 43rd birthday. and I had done a wine tour. So on my way to rehab, I was passing all these vineyards that I'd visited like a year before, less than a year before. So it was quite ironic, really, to go to the place where, and I got the tools I needed. I met some incredible people, some wonderful addicts, and the help I needed to stay on the right path. That's not to say that I haven't struggled. It's a daily struggle. Not so much a daily struggle anymore, but it was a daily struggle for the first year or two. There are times when I have relapsed in the last 3 years, but I'm not ashamed of it, But the key is that, any addict that wants to quit, any addict that wants to get well, then they deserve a chance to try. And that's how I look at my life. There are people I know that struggle, and we talk to each other, there's a good collective unit here in Nairobi of people that have been to treatment or recovering. So there's a good collective community of pick up a phone if you're feeling that way, or go and meet someone for a coffee. But it's a daily struggle. We have a disease. Addiction is a disease. I think that has to be put out there. And it's not something that just goes away because you've decided one morning, I'm not going to drink or I'm not going to use drugs. So it's a daily struggle for sure.
So how long did the letting go take? Was it like in and out? Did you go back and start drinking and get pulled back?
So they have this thing that happens to recovering addicts. At some point, you have sort of a spiritual awakening if you're doing a lot of the work, and that happened to me about a year and a half after I came out of rehab. So I had become a sober drunk, which is basically, the addiction is a very small part of the recovery process. Usually, addicts are people who, I wouldn't say, probably not the kindest or nicest people when they're using, you know what I mean? So I was sober, but my mentality and my outlook on life hadn't changed for the first year of my recovery. But about a year and a half in, I was in Hawaii on a surfing holiday, and I had this incredible, and sitting in the ocean, incredible spiritual awakening where everything just kind of, like my eyes just opened up and I'm like, oh my God, this is why I'm sober. This is the reason. So that was the Christmas 2019. Yeah. And that for me was so every time I struggle, I think of those moments where I had this kind of eye-opening experience and nothing really special happened. It just kind of, I was overwhelmed with emotion in one place, sitting in the ocean, looking at, mountains and water and trees and feeling the breeze. And it just kind of dawned on me that, life is so beautiful when your mind is clear. Something you can imagine I hadn't had for 25 years leading up to going to treatment. 25 years I was, my mind was always clouded with, either booze or recovering from a hangover or whatever the case may be. So that was, that's one thing that kind of keeps me on the straight and narrow now, is just going back to that memory. And those miracles, to be honest, happen quite often when you're clear-headed. I do see a lot of things I probably wouldn't see if I wasn't sober.
Someone over here, Alia, says it's admirable to take the first step. So definitely, it's a very, very big deal. What do you usually do other than work to keep your mind busy and off alcohol? What do you do?
Well, my work, luckily for me, my work is a very creative. I have, all the work I do is in the creative space. So my mind is constantly moving. We're quite busy now, which is nice. So that helped. The beginning of COVID, I'll tell you, was very difficult to stay sober because you're kind of just sitting at home going, okay. I exercise a lot. I gym a lot, I would say I travel. I love to travel, but I haven't had an opportunity to. COVID and work has been, kept me in Nairobi for the better part of the last year and a half. But I tend to pull myself in. I tend to pull myself into things like I did with drugs and alcohol. So now I'm kind of a workaholic, and I'm kind of become a bit of a fitness freak as well. And that's, those are addictions too, I guess, but probably better than the alternative. So yeah.
Definitely. So do you think you're a spiritual person? I mean, what is spirituality to you?
Yeah, I was raised Muslim. I wouldn't say that I'm a devout Muslim. I think that would be misleading. Nor would I say I'm overly religious. But spirituality is something I discovered in treatment in South Africa, and something that I really believe in. I do believe there's a force that that is guiding you, and that is, you know, what the vibrations you put out is what you get back. I didn't have any understanding of that in my active addiction at all. You know, it was always me, 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 me. So I do believe that there is some sort of spiritual guide in your life, that depends on how you live your life. So, you know, if you are doing the right thing, you'll be rewarded. If you're not doing the right thing, then I think, you know, you'll see the other side, which I have seen as well.
Do you currently think do you follow any therapeutic practices, yoga, any certain spiritual practice you follow religiously, like meditate every day or something like that?
I get on my knees every night before I go to bed. I've never been a person of prayer, but I do speak to my higher power every night before I sleep. I did do a bit of yoga when I came back from treatment, but you know, these things, when COVID hit and the gyms and the yoga studios and the things like that were all closed, it just kind of fell off. So something I probably need to get back into. But I do get on my knees every night before bed. It's very new for me. This is not something I did ever before, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So, and I do speak to my higher power every single night. Yeah.
Awesome. So we have a question that came in.
Mm-hmm.
How can one realize when habit or activity has become an addiction?
Well, I think it's quite simple. Try and stop it and see how well you do. You know, I mean, I think that's what I did. I tried to quit, and I tried to quit, and I tried to quit, and I couldn't quit. So, you know, try and stop. Try and stop for a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, a week. And if you're struggling, then it's probably an addiction. You know.
How many times did you try and stop and try and stop? How many times?
Probably more than I can even count, to be honest. From the age of 25 to the age of 43, more than probably 50, 60 times, I've said to myself, that's it, I'm done. 3 days. And then, you know, it's usually the cause of a hangover to say, I'm never drinking again. And when you start feeling better, you're like, actually, it's not that bad. You know? So, yeah.
For sure. I know, I've been there.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at Instagram, and we have so many nice people signing in.
Sure.
So, according to you, what steps can one take if they feel that they are addicted and it's no longer a habit, it's an addiction?
You know, I think everyone has to take a good look at themselves in the mirror. You know, there's a lot of literature online to know if you are, in fact, you know, an addict. But like I said, I think, you know, a majority of people that I know that socially drink are in fact addicts and would never admit it. It really is an issue. It really is a problem here. Well, here, I would say all over the world, maybe. But, you know, we have a big culture of drinking here that it's almost, the addiction is almost normalized. And I wouldn't want to be a person that preaches to anyone about, you know, you might be an addict, you might not be an addict. That's not, I don't have the expertise to do that. But what I would say is, you know, if you take a good look at the mirror and ask yourself a question, can I stop doing this if I want to? And chances are, if the answer is no, and if you're honest with yourself, then you're an addict. Again, I think that there's a lot of it's hard to quit. It's hard. It's a journey of ups and downs, sitting with your emotions without masking them or submerging them in something, sitting with your anger and your fears sober. It's a frightening prospect for many people, you know. It was for me for many years. Going into a room full of people on a Friday night into a party and not being able to have something that kind of numbs the anxiety. All those things that are very difficult. You know, people tend to think that because I was in the media and because I come off quite self-assured that I could possibly have any insecurities in these situations. But it really boiled down to walking into a party and just sucking down 3 double whiskeys just so I could have a conversation. yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that. I wouldn't have admitted it 5 years ago, but I can admit it now that a lot of that was based on the fact that there were those insecurities and those fear. Addiction is just a symptom of a much bigger problem,
Definitely.
usually from childhood or something like that. So for me, I think it was dealing with a lot of childhood trauma as well. And many male addicts, from what I understand, are addicted because of their relationship with their father or things they saw from their father.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in quite an abusive household,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw a lot of abuse towards my mom from my dad, and I'm not using it as an excuse for anything, um, but I was trying to hide. I was trying to run away from that. So I had actually forgotten all about that for a good 10 years of my life because I just drank my way through the pain. Now I sit with those emotions and I'm not angry at anyone. I don't have those resentments anymore. I'm quite comfortable with talking about it, and I'm quite, yeah, letting go. Exactly. Yeah.
We have an interesting question here from
Sure.
Alia. It says, "What was your driving force to want to quit?" Alia Kasam says that before we go.
My my driving force to want to quit would probably have been my kids, my two boys. I one thing I always was, even in my active addiction, was I was present for my son, my oldest son. My youngest wasn't born then, and I think for me it was, if I continue this lifestyle, I'd probably lose my kids, or at least they would resent me like I resented my dad for many
Yeah.
years. I didn't want to be like that. And also my mom, she's one of the most incredible and resilient human beings you'll ever meet. I've never seen her lose her temper. I've never seen her get it. And she's been through. And interestingly, my mom got diagnosed with cancer in 2019. And I was in an AA meeting in Maui in Hawaii with my whole family. It was an open meeting, so they came with me for a meeting to see what it was like. And I was sharing the story, and I said, I have gratitude that my mom was diagnosed in 2019 with cancer because I was sober. That's my gratitude. I imagine being in my active addiction and then my mom gets diagnosed with cancer. So there is always a silver lining to sobriety. At least I could be there. I could be present. I could be, fulfill my role as a son because I was clean and sober during that diagnosis. And I think there are those moments in life where you say, these are the reasons why I'm sober. These are the reasons why I needed to get clean.
Definitely, definitely. We see a lot of people who are in different stages. And what would your advice be for people who are currently recovering, or the youth, your
Yeah.
fans, are who are tempted to drink, especially teenagers or young people recovering?
Yeah, I've got
Hmm.
a couple of pieces of advice. One is, it is really important if you get sober to understand it's only about these 24 hours. I used to think, oh man, I've been sober for 6 months. Why are these addicts saying that they're sober today and just for today? Until you relapse and realize, oh yeah, I was sober yesterday and today I'm in active addiction again. So that I'm sober today or staying sober for 24 hours is all we have, and we can't worry. I don't know. Tomorrow as Fareed, I may relapse tomorrow. I have no idea. I know I'm sober today. And also, this is not advice any counselor will give anyone, but I firmly believe this, and that's something that I kind of live by. A relapse is not the end of the world. It's a chance to start over again. So, because people, what happens is when they relapse, they say, okay, that's it. That means I can't do it. So I'm just going to keep drinking. I'm going to keep using drugs. But you know what? I've relapsed 3 years, maybe 5, 6 times, and I don't hate myself for it. Every time I do, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's actually why I don't drink. You know what I mean? But it was a chance to start again, a chance to relook at my life. What did I do wrong? Where did it go wrong? How can I make sure that doesn't happen next time? So never look at a relapse as a failure at all. We're addicts. We're sick. This is something we're going to live with for the rest of our lives. That's why we continue to call ourselves addicts, even if we're sober. My sponsor is 29 years sober, and he still calls himself an alcoholic.
Wow.
So, I mean, and he has not touched a drop in 29 years because we will live with this disease forever.
We have two very interesting questions. One on Instagram that says, how best can a loved one, be it family, friend, spouse, support an addict?
I think first understanding that it is a sickness is really important. That it's not, okay, there is choice in this sickness. It's not like, cancer or something like that. But we do have a disease. So there has to be a certain amount of empathy for the addict that truly wants to recover. There are also addicts that don't want to recover. So that's a different, a lot of hard truths, a lot of restrictions. If you're a parent of a young child who's an addict, you have to become hard. You have to, take a little bit of control and ensure that they're not seeing the same people or going to the same places. It's tough, for a parent. And, also that empathy has to come with some sort of strictness as well. You can be, say, sometimes cruel to be kind. I think that's the saying. So, the freedoms we're allowed in Africa and Kenya, especially in terms of access to substances and alcohol. I mean, it's not like that all over the world. You can literally go up the road here to a kiosk and get what you want. So,
I did not know that. Okay.
I'm sure. But I think it's difficult. It's a difficult balance for family members as well. But I think if an addict is truly an addict that wants to quit and wants to get better, then I think it's a much easier task. If it's someone who is addicted and it's lip service, oh yeah, I want to get clean, then I don't think that's a whole different problem, a whole different solution. If someone had told me in my 20s, you should get clean, I mean,
you will not listen. Obviously.
No, we wouldn't be having this conversation, that's for sure. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Obviously, it's harder with a spouse. It's very, very tough. I mean, it cannot be like a parent to a child. So what would you advise wives or even husbands out there who want to, do this for their spouse?
Look, I think you have to make ultimatums. I mean, if it is affecting your relationship, if it's affecting, the children's well-being, I think it's always going to have to be about your kid. If you have kids, it's always going to be about the kids. So I think you have to make an ultimatum, and make a decision that if this continues, then things have to change. We see it a lot now. I see a lot of people reach out to me and say that after seeing it did. I mean, it was hard to stomach when it happened, but at the end of the day, I think if it hadn't happened and if things had gone back to normal when I came back, I don't think maybe I wouldn't have stayed clean, as well. So those are sort of like motivational techniques that maybe not the easiest to digest, but it is what it is. I get a lot of people reaching out to me today saying my Engage video actually gave them the courage to leave their addicted spouse, or gave them the courage to go to rehab or something like that. So, whatever I can do to help, by forums like this one, in fact.
Definitely. I'm sure
this is, yeah, this is what gives me a lot of joy now is talking openly about addiction without hiding anything.
We have a very interesting question. This is very big of you, Fareed. Jayan Patel says that. And then he says, thank you. How much getting out of addiction was down to you? And how much was down to the work of the higher power through you? What would you say?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, it's a hard one. Thanks for that. I think it's a combination of both, but I think it can't be done without the higher power. It can't. And so really it's kind of one and the same. If I hadn't discovered my spirituality and my need for a higher being in my life, then I don't think that this would have worked in any way, shape, or form.
We have a very interesting question that came in. It says, what resources do we have in Kenya that people can reach out to anonymously and get help with addiction? If you know organizations and people.
Sure. So it's surprisingly high amount of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous meetings in Nairobi. Okay. And in other parts of Kenya as well, not everywhere, like in the more developed parts of the world. They are anonymous. Of course, when when I came back from rehab and went into an AA meeting, it wasn't anonymous for me, obviously, because you do say your first name and people kind of recognize me from radio and things like that.
I'm sure you will.
But as far as rehab centers go, I don't know in Kenya. You know, I didn't even think about it. I wanted to get out of Kenya actually, because I felt like if I stayed here, it would be very easy for me to leave a treatment center because you're not in prison. You know what I mean? If you want to go, you can go. It's voluntary exercise. You know, so I wanted to kind of get out of here so that if I was stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere, at least I would do the whole limit. So I don't know about rehab centers here. I've not heard of good or bad reviews of any. But I think the AA meetings, there's many. If you go online and look at AA Kenya, you get a whole schedule and it's there. And good place to start. A good place to start for sure.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Since you are famous and you are known in Kenya in the media scene, why did you decide to acknowledge this problem or this addiction publicly? Weren't you scared? How will it affect your image?
No, not at all. I felt something like maybe it's the higher power again. I didn't even think twice about it. Someone approached me to talk at a men and mental health convention, and I just started talking about addiction. I was on the panel. From there, someone from the Engage panel was in the audience, invited me to talk at Engage. I've never thought twice about it. I never even thought it would affect my or career for that matter. I don't think that there's enough people speaking about these issues that have a platform to do it. I hope that it helps people, but it's also really helpful for me, you know, to stay sober. It keeps me accountable for one. But also talking about it, you know, sometimes you forget why you do it. And then you do something like what we're doing right now. And you're like, oh, that's why I'm sober. You know, so there is also that as well. So it's also a little bit of therapy for me too, but unselfishly also that I really do hope that it reaches people and they can say, okay, man, I've been at rock bottom. I've been through hell. I came home to an empty house with no kids. You know what I mean? I've been through hell, but it's even through all of those things, even through all of that hardship and pain and emotional turmoil, it's still better on this side of sobriety. You know what I mean? It's still much better here.
Yeah. We have a message from Maura. He says, congrats and thanks for speaking out and reducing the stigma. We should decriminalize addiction. Decriminalize?
I'm not sure what that means, but I think what he's saying is that it should not be such a difficult thing to put out in the public forum, I think.
Definitely. And then we have Rachna. She says, in your experience, how can you identify within yourself that you have a problem? Obviously, we discussed that, but you can answer that briefly.
Sure. Rachna, thanks for the question. I think it's more, you know, when you try to stop something, and it can be anything, you know, it can be you're addicted to work and you decide to take a weekend off and turn your phone off and you're sitting there shaking your leg and panicking the whole time and you're not present. That's probably an addiction. You know what I mean? So it could be drugs, alcohol, love, people, codependency, whatever. If you can't
using your
physically phone. I mean, maybe not the phone, but the access to work, you know. I mean, I was just talking to someone on the phone when I took the call, and we were in our just before we got on, and I said I'd take a quick call. I was talking to someone who's quite a codependent person, and his girlfriend has just left, and he's broken, and this is an addiction to people. You know, so if you physically ask yourself, can I stop doing this for a day, a week, a month, and you can't, then it's probably an addiction. You know, I'm a smoker. I smoke cigarettes. When I was in rehab, I decided that I was going to quit smoking cigarettes too. And my addiction counselor told me, look, you're here quitting a lot of things. Maybe just take it easy and keep smoking for a little. yeah. It might be a little bit too much pressure. So, yeah. And I have tried to quit smoking numerous times and I find it very difficult. So.
Shahina asks, how many times did you go to rehab and how long was the process? Obviously, you've answered it, but briefly again, I think people are just coming.
Yeah, just the once. And I was supposed to be there for 28 days, but I stayed for 35.
Okay. I think people go many times. I think there are people who go and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
come back and they, start again, and then it's a whole cycle. So maybe that's why she asked so many times.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have gone 2, 3, 4, 5 times, to in fact, one of my good friends from rehab, a Dutch fellow who I became quite close to, he's now in his 3rd rehab stint. So
Okay. So we have a very interesting question from Zach Bonyagore, who is on Instagram, and he asks, how much money did you lose, if you give an estimate? Obviously, perhaps he's asking about the alcohol, but also the rehab. I don't know, both. How much money
So
did you lose?
there's an interesting exercise you do in rehab where you calculate your financial loss during your addiction, and it was close to, I could have bought a new apartment in Lavington and a brand new car over the 25 years of my active addiction. So probably around $250,000 or something like this. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Oh my God, that's a lot of money. A lot of money. And I'm sure your cigarettes are also adding up. And
the next thing I quit for sure.
Are you thinking of working on it, on stopping smoking?
I am. I've heavily reduced. So soon, hopefully none. But you kind of give up a lot. So I have two addictions now for substances, which are caffeine and nicotine. Caffeine and nicotine. So yeah, okay. I'm a coffee addict, but mainly because of my schedule.
I think I could call myself a coffee addict too. I have 3 black coffees in the first half of the day, but
that's about the same for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have one more comment that says, "Thanks for sharing your story, Fareed. It's from Back to Nature Africa, and they say you being transparent about your addiction journey will be impactful and empowering to yourself, and more power to you, and much more success moving forward."
Thank you very much. That's nice thing to say. Thank you.
I think you're reaching out to a lot of people. I'm really happy. Like, so many people are happy and thanking you and congratulating you.
Wonderful. I'm glad. And again, that's part of the reason that I really enjoy doing these things,
Yeah. I'm sure lots of people would have shame and embarrassment. So I'm really glad that you're speaking about it like something very normal, and it should be normal to acknowledge it and to move out of it and move forward. Amazing.
Agreed. And I think once we can reduce the stigma of this person is an addict or this person is this or this person is that, and what do they say? I own it. I own my addiction. I own it. Like it's mine. You know what I mean? Like I can, if I want to talk about it, I can talk about it. If I don't want to talk about it, I don't have to talk about it. But it's mine. So
yes, it is yours.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Rohan says, "Well in for spreading the message, mate." And then we have thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for your brave story, brother. You said you got an addiction supporting network here in Nairobi. Do you have the contact? Share. Keep up the good work. So
that's fine. That's you said that's Rowan. You said no problem. Rowan, you can DM me on Instagram, and then I can share whatever information you're asking for. No problem at all.
Somebody called Karina of Sweden. She says, "Can you?"
Oh, okay, sure. No problem. Yeah, just direct message me on Instagram, Karina, and then I will give you the information you're asking for. That's no problem at all.
And then we are having people who are coming on Facebook, so I'm really happy. And we have Alia asking another question that says, if someone doesn't realize they have a problem, do you think they should be coaxed into treatment?
No. I don't think that's my belief. I'm sure there's a different school of thought on that as well. I met many people in rehab that were forced to go, but I don't think that's the answer. I think that someone needs to realize it on their own that they have a problem. You force someone into a situation they don't want to go to, they're probably not going to put their heart and soul into it. Yeah. So no, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. It has to be from the inside. And then we have Nomad Girl Tales asking, if you notice your friend is addicted and you can see it's harming them, but they don't want to change, what can you do?
Again, that's a tough one. They say these, what do they call them when interventions? I know a lot of people that it does help when you get a group of people together to talk to someone. They do help. I know a lot of people that have been through interventions that, it's changed their lives as well. So I think the more people that can speak to them, sometimes hearing it from one person, it's almost just like an opinion. You
Yeah.
need to kind of collective group of people that say we all feel like this, then maybe that'll get through to them.
Yeah, important. How do you remain sober after alcohol is so common after work? We have Rafiq, right? I'm sorry. Rafiq Keshivji saying, how do you remain sober after alcohol is so common at work?
Rafiq, hi, because we know each other. I go home. Or I go to the gym, or I go and meet someone for a coffee. Changing the perception of what the normal is. I used to go to Kingele's every day after work, and come home swaying this way and that way, but now I don't. I go to the gym, or I come home, or I, go and see a friend, or one really good way of therapy for me is getting straight into the kitchen and cooking, which I love to do. And that's almost like the real sort of, wind down for me is cooking up something nice, and then watch something silly on TV and go to bed and get up the next day and do it all over again. I don't think that it is common everywhere in the world. An after work drink is normal. That's what they call it, happy hour, I guess. That period between 5 and 7. But I don't think it has to be a happy. You can go to Art Cafe and have coffee after work with a friend. They can have a drink if they want. You don't have to. Yeah, I'm not an unsocial person. That's the thing. I don't want to be a person who doesn't socialize because I can't drink. That's ridiculous.
Obviously, it's hard when you have a lot of friends who drink and you're hanging out with the same crowd and the same people, and suddenly everyone is drinking regularly, same thing, and you're the person who has to have a coffee. It's so hard. I can imagine.
I have a few tricks in that situation. One is tonic water with ice and lime, so it looks like a drink, and so no one asks you if you're having a drink. That helps. And obviously, there's non-alcoholic beer in the market as well. It's not very good. I don't really enjoy it, but if I just feel like no one asking me, I will pour one in a glass and hold it. But generally, I will look. Most of my friends are fully aware of my situation and fully aware that I went to treatment, and no one really, they may ask when I get there, and then once I say no, then it's a done deal, and you also know your times when you're starting to feel around 10, 11 at night. You like, man, if I stay here another hour, I might actually have a drink. So I think I'll go home now, and everyone kind of understands,
Okay. So we have Nomad Girl who says, thank you for the idea of an intervention. Wouldn't have thought about it, bringing it up as a group. And I also think it's interesting. I never thought of it as that important, but good. And then we have Jayan saying, what did you find most useful or valuable in helping you come out of addiction?
The 12-step program was probably the most useful tool, which is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is an incredible, it's hard, it's a lot of work. And many people who have careers or go to school find it very difficult to find the time. But there's some really important things. The step that helped the most was step 4. Which is to make a fearless and honest moral inventory of yourself. And step 5 is to share it with your sponsor and your higher power. Those are probably, when it took me 2 years and a week to do it, 2 years to put it off, and about a week to do it. But yeah, I filled an A4 book front and back, with just things that I like and dislike and things that upset me in my youth and grudges and resentments I held on to, and it just kind of all comes pouring out, and you can kind of live without this massive weight on your shoulders after that, because it's stuff that we kind of pack in the back of our brains and don't want to deal with for the foreseeable future. And this is where all that anxiety and tension comes up that, a good stiff whiskey or a good beer will kind of help to release. So maybe, it's always held in the back of your neck, that kind of anger and tension. That helped. That really helped. There was a lot. And we all have things about ourselves we like and dislike. It's good to acknowledge them,
We have Alia saying, how did your family deal with your addiction? Kind of covered, but...
I mean, my family is a big group of people. Spoke about my relationship and my kids and all that, but my mom and my other family, blood family, have been incredible and incredibly supportive, and and very proud, and very proud of me being able to turn it around. My aunt was just sending me a message the other day of an old picture of me looking like a real mess with a glass of champagne in my hand at some event in Spain. And she just said, I just prefer you so much more sober, So she just sent me a picture of me. It was actually yesterday she sent me the picture. So, there's always that acknowledgement, and they've taken a real interest in my
That's
recovery as
amazing.
well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have good family members and supportive family members. I think it's very, very important, and you're very lucky, I guess. Very, very lucky.
Very, very, very blessed with my family. To all of them have been so supportive during this entire process.
Good. So we have one more question that we missed. I think. Oh, we have someone saying, "Wishing you well, Fareed, and all the suffering in silence." And obviously, lots of people are really happy. And then we have somebody saying, would you say that one can use the same techniques to fight other kinds of addictions?
100%. The basic basis of an addiction is normally the same. It's an escape from something. So yeah, 100%. Most of the alcoholics programs, whether it's narcotics, sex and love, gambling, alcoholics, the fundamentals are all the same. 12 steps are more or less the same. So I do think you can use them for more or less every addiction in the world. I do.
Yeah. And we have a lot of these help centers and helplines in Kenya for other addictions as well.
I don't know. NA, Narcotics Anonymous, yes, absolutely. And alcoholics, I don't know about. But when I was in South Africa, they had like gambling, sex and love. They have everything. I don't know about here. I really don't. I know Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous programs exist here, but I don't know about them.
We have, again, Rafiq says, wonderful answer about your work. But how do you stay sober when your work involves being in events like cocktails and part of your work and networking? How do you manage?
Yeah, so media is notorious for parties and substances and alcohol and things like that. So I just look. I think you get to a certain age and a certain maturity where you can separate the two. I love what I do. I'm not going to change what I do. I think it's very hard in your 20s and 30s. It was for me to be in this industry and not use, But I think you get to a certain age where it's like, also not caring what people think as well. I think that's a huge. I turned to. I recall just a few weeks ago telling someone that I actually don't care what people think about me anymore, and that's a great place to be.
Only way to be. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not always like that. Many people who say that that's not how they feel. For me, it's something quite new, and I think that's probably the reason I can function in this industry and be sober, and I don't care. If people say you don't drink, no, I don't drink.
Good.
Sometimes I use religion, just so they'll get off my back. If it's someone I don't really know well, I know I'm a Muslim. They're like, oh, okay, it's fine. It's just easier than explaining. I went to rehab, and so yeah.
Long story short, I'm Muslim.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of people congratulating you on Instagram, and we see this has been beautiful. Great to use your story to help others. Fareed never cared what people thought of him. So true. I think And we have Rasna saying, true, I was very proud of my dad who gave up smoking after 40 years of being a chain smoker. And I'm so proud to talk about him and about his willpower. So, yeah, I guess. And then we have Jayan saying, the talk is titled Addiction to Self-Mastery. Can you share more about your self-mastery now? What does that look like? And what are your practices and current inquiry?
Self-mastery is, I don't know, I didn't, that someone else came up with that, but I understand. Yeah. but self-mastery, I guess, it's a journey. It's not a destination, right? So, trying to find your true self, without, in a world of sobriety, in a world of recovery. And that goes across all areas of my life. from my work to my relationship with people, with family, with people I love. I think making sure that your mindset is correct, that you're not, this whole thing about vibrations, about what you give out to the world, you get back. I'm living proof that's a thing. From rock bottom when it was me to just seeing abundance now. And I'm not talking about material and financial abundance, although, that's because that doesn't really matter. Abundance in terms of the love I get and the respect people give me.
Your
I think
relationship.
that's probably my relationships, and most importantly, my relationship with myself,
Yeah.
which is not always great. It's not always a pleasant relationship, but it's definitely more pleasant than it was in the past. But I think it's more the journey to self-mastery, if you ever really can get there, is just realizing that there's another way to live. And that can be a life where you think about others, you don't just think about yourself. I remember years ago when I was in my active addiction, I got this massive deal doing a reality show for an alcohol brand. My company did, and it was huge money. My mom said to me, you should go to the mosque and give thanks. And my response in my active addiction to my mom was, give thanks to who? I did this. No one else did this. This is me. And I think I apologize to her almost every weekend for that comment that I made about 5 years ago. But that was how I lived my life. I just thought everything that I had, I deserved because I worked for it. There was no other forces at play. And, then when you lose everything and you're sitting there and you're like, maybe there is something out there that's that guides you. And maybe this is why I'm in this place alone, is because of the way I lived my life before, So, I do think that journey to self-mastery is, you may never reach there, but it's always good to aim for that, But it doesn't have to be the way I live my life. That's me. Like I said, that's how I do mine. But I can sleep at night relatively clean and conscious that I've done the right thing that day, and that's new.
That's a new Fareed.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yes.
Yeah, we have somebody else saying, love your authenticity, Fareed. Nomad Girl Tale says that. Love your authenticity. Thank you, Fareed. And then we have, this is such a heartwarming story, the transparency, the ups and downs. You should be so proud of yourself. And thank you for sharing this.
Thank you. Thank you for listening in, and commenting. It means a lot. Like I said, this is also I get a lot of help from doing this and seeing the reactions in the comments as well. It really helps me too. It's not just on the one side of the screen. It's both ways.
We have Shahina saying, what support did you have post-rehab from family and friends? Obviously it's answered, but briefly.
Yeah, I had great support. Family was really happy for me and, helped me to stay on the right path. Friends, the wider community of recovering addicts in Kenya. In Nairobi, I've become very close to a number of people. My sponsor as well. I had great support. People that I can pick up a phone now and tell someone I'm feeling like a drink, and there'll be someone at my door in 10, 15 minutes, I'm certain, or at least someone to stay on the phone with me. So, I haven't had to use it yet. I haven't had to do that yet, but I think that there is a community of people here. It's really an incredible program. People in recovery. It's quite unique to the world. I don't think you'll find it in many. We just kind of know what the other one is going through, which is nice.
Yeah. This is definitely heartwarming. I personally have a short story to share. It's about my dad, who smoked since he was 13, and nothing in the world, all his medical problems, nothing could stop him from smoking. But I think when my grandfather passed away and he realized the value of life as a father, he just threw a packet of cigarettes and that's the end. And it took him.
Really?
So
that's an incredible story.
Yeah. So I definitely, it's a really tough decision. I understand, and it's in the subconscious. Leaving something is so hard, but wow, hats off. Seriously, all of you guys who
and to your dad as well. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible, yeah.
Coming off at 13 and then leaving it, it's impossible. But he did it, and he's been maybe years now, over 20 years.
Well, there
So
are
yeah,
no coincidences in life, that happened for that to happen.
yeah, yeah. So I guess that's it. I mean, with the questions and comments, and it's been a good show. I think I have asked my questions and asked everybody's questions, and I understand your journey, and I think it's so amazing, so amazing. I mean, it takes a lot to quit something you're so addicted to. I cannot
I
understand. I
really,
don't have such an addiction, but hats off.
I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me, and I feel honored to have been asked to be a guest on the show as well. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I really did. And thanks for all the comments and the questions and everyone who tuned in. And like I said, if there's anyone who needs any advice or help, you can DM me on Instagram, and I'll see what I can pass your way.
Thank you, and thank you everybody on Instagram as well who joined us. We have
Thank
two
you.
screens, and this has been awesome. Thank you guys. And Conscious Kenya looks forward to having you next week. Every Tuesday there'll be a show, new guests, new hosts, and maybe Fareed will be hosting the next show, and we'll have something else.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Let's
But
see. Let's see. Yeah.
let's see.
Thanks very much. I really
Thank
enjoyed
you
that.
guys. Thank you everybody.
All right.
Bye bye. Good night,
Bye
everyone.
bye.